right. Welcome everyone to the April 21st Water Commissioners meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on our local cable access channel, and I believe it's live as well. If anybody is watching, and it is a hybrid meeting, and you have a question, please put your name and address into the Q&A for our minutes and just ask your question that way, and Sean will keep an eye on flagging anything that's on there. And I'm going to ask the members to introduce themselves to ensure that we have quorum. We do have one on remote. So, Mark, you want to go first?
Good evening, Mark Lamb.
Jamie Stebbins.
Dottie Fulgenetti.
Greg Barger.
And we have our interim town administrator, Sean Dugan, our finance director, Wendy Nightingale, and our executive assistant, Elizabeth Hegg. So with that, we are going to jump right into the discussion and vote for a declaration of a state of water supply conservation, phase 2. And we're going to be speaking with Water Division Operations Manager, Jeffrey Clunan. Come on up.
Thank you.
Sit down.
Oh,
We're
sorry.
good. It's all good. First time.
Thanks
Hello.
for being here.
Thank you for having us. The Water Division is recommending a Phase 2 water supply conservation this year instead of the Phase 1, Phase 3, mostly due to the projects that have been completed. Bay Road Tank, the wells have been rehabbed, and the water treatment plant is up and running. So we would request to enact Phase 2 of our water restrictions, which is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So the Monday, Thursday is the even day from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And Tuesday, Friday is the odd day, same hours. So we would like to go back to that.
Okay, great. Any questions? Do you want to?
No, Jeff and I had a conversation on Saturday about it, so very.
Well, for people at home, in the past, when we've had the water conservation restrictions to a 3 right out of the gate, that is because they were repairing and building, repairing the water tank, repairing other repairs, and then also building the PFAS treatment facility. So that put a big impact on our water, and we did start out at 3. The state monitors the amount of usage and rainfall and so forth, so it could change during the year if we go into a drought, but coming out of the gate right now, a 2 should be make people happy.
Absolutely. We were fortunate enough to be at the 58 gallons per person per day last year, which was well under the 65. So we'll hope to stay under that again, obviously.
Great. I hope people will still, even though we don't have the extreme water ban, keep thinking about conservation in our daily lives. You guys have done some great work putting out some ideas of ways to conserve water, not just about lawn watering, but changing your faucets and your sprinklers and things like that to be able to conserve water. So I hope people will just kind of keep that in the back of their mind as well.
Yeah, and just, we do hope people conserve water, like you said, Dottie. If we do exceed the 65 gallons per capita per day, then next year we'll be forced to start off at a phase 3. So we want to have people use it responsibly. We've unleashed it to go to phase 2 now with the 2 days a week. But if it's abused, we will be stuck next year with the phase 3 again. So we just caution people.
Yeah, and I just want to give a plug for, on the website for the water department, there's a link to your water meter app, and you can go on there and see how much water you're using. So last month we had a toilet that kept running, and I kept saying to my husband, you know, can you fix that? He did, but I went on and looked on the graph, and it was like, you know, water. Like we used more water in that one day than we had in the previous week, just from that one day of the toilet running. When the handle just didn't clasp the right way. So people should look at that every once in a while. It's a good way to know if you have a leak too anywhere in your irrigation system when you turn those on.
Yeah, it's amazing how much water that would go through a toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, If there's no
So
other
I move to
comments.
declare a Phase 2 State of Water Supply Conservation from May 1, 2026 to November 1, 2026.
Second, Stebbins.
So that's Bodger and Stebbins, and we'll do a roll call vote because we have Mark remote.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
Okay, and then we have acceptance of minutes dated January 26th, 2026.
That was
So moved, Barger.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins, and roll call vote, starting with you, Mark.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
And finally, a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we have to wait 4 minutes before we start the select board meeting. We should ask more questions. Yeah, we get 4 minutes to wait, so if you want to do that, thank you.
Joe, do you know why we're in mirror mode? Got it.
So we can go live when you're ready. All right, terrific. Welcome to the April 21st Select Board meeting. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So again, this meeting is being recorded by our local cable access channel, and it's being broadcast live. It is available upon demand by going to their YouTube channel for ECAT and looking up Select Board meeting and then the date. The meeting is hybrid, so if anybody is on the Zoom and you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. Put your name and address for our minutes and your question, and Sean will monitor that. And I'm just going to ask for introductions to ensure that we have a quorum, starting with Mark,
Mark Lamb.
Jamie Stebbins.
Dottie Fulgenetti,
Craig Barger.
and we have our interim town administrator, Sean Dugan, our finance director, Wendy Nightingale, and our executive assistant, Elizabeth Hegg. So we are ready to jump into this meeting with the first item, which is recognition of the Easton Department of Public Works for outstanding snow removal and rescue of a child during a blizzard.
Thank you, Dottie. So anyone that stepped foot outside any time in the past couple of months knew just how exceptionally bad of a winter we had in 2026. And in the spirit of recognizing extraordinary work, we felt it was warranted to have recognition at the select board meeting to show our appreciation for and spread awareness of just how difficult a snow season it was for our DPW team and how fantastic of a job they did in response to it. So just for some context, we had 71 inches of snow this winter. Second highest total in more than a decade. And those were spread across 9 long duration storms that I think you can all appreciate just how terrible they were. Think of how bad it was for you in your commute in your daily life and add hours before and after that the DPW was spending to clean those up. And despite those conditions, DPW, our crews, never let up from their core responsibilities, because if you think of snow removal as just one piece of what they do, there's so much more. They're responding to water main breaks, they're keeping our buildings fresh. I mean, they've got so many more responsibilities that they have to keep going, and they did them all fantastically, and I think that deserves recognition. That was a comment that I heard over and over and over again, is that Easton's roads were better than any of our neighbors. And I mean, I live in Franklin. I was hearing all the way out to Franklin and saying that passing through Easton was just a breeze. So I think that's something that deserves recognition, and that you can come here to see that we do appreciate what went into that. And one thing that I thought was really interesting that Dave had posted on Facebook that I think helps contextualize just the severity of it. This is just the statistics from DPW's response since February 22nd during the blizzard. 2,400 staff hours logged, 7,500 vehicle miles logged in plowing and cleanup, 31 inches of snow accumulation, 70.7 inches in total that season, 330,000 tons of snow cleared. That's incredible when you put in those numbers. And what is something that I'll have Dave tell the story on next is one missing child located and safely returned during the blizzard. Again, I've worked for 4 different towns, and in the town that we live in has such an incredible DPW that I would stack up against anyone in the state. They're just a fantastic crew, and I'm happy to have them here tonight to be able to be recognized by the board.
Great. Something else just to add to that is beyond going out and doing the snow removal, the DPW has always been considered part of our emergency operations team. And so when we have any kind of big weather event or any significant event like that, talk a little bit about like what happens, how you include Stonehill, Southeastern Regional, what those calls are and how often you have them, and how does that work?
Yeah, Dave might actually be better suited to respond to that, or Jay actually. But there is regular coordination. We had regular talks with Stonehill and Southeastern to make sure that we're coordinating our efforts with theirs. And I'm not sure if Dave wants to. We probably had, especially during the blizzard, to make sure that when we were opening schools, we were including Stonehill and Southeastern Regional on top of the Easton Public Schools. So everyone, because I think people forget how much education exists within just our 29 square miles. So the coordination on our DPW and their opinion matters a lot in how they make decisions for their operations. So I'm not sure if Dave, you want to add something to that.
Sure. I'll jump in. I'm sorry. I'll go over here. First of all, this is very abnormal for us. We do not like the limelight. We like to do our work, and people not to know we're there, because that means we're doing something right. But we do appreciate this. Dottie, on the emergency operations front, we work really closely with police and fire. Justin's our emergency management director, and we're really close coordination. We have, the radios in our trucks now that help. Every truck has a radio in it, and it helps with situational awareness. So we can see we can hear the calls when there's an ambulance run needed. We know let's get a truck down that way, make sure it's clear. When there's a missing child, we can hear on the radio and take action. So again, the emergency operations, we are a first responder, and we take that role really seriously. We're typically on the weather event side of it. I don't want to overplay our hand, but we work really close with police and fire.
Yeah. Great.
I also want to, even though I would hate it if someone did it to me, but I'm sorry, I have to recognize that our highway supervisor, Jay Concession, knows these roads better than anyone else and knows snow operations like no other. So I feel like he deserves a little extra credit for leading the operation, and we appreciate all that you do.
Yes.
And then Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit about the happenings of the blizzard in February and our staff's involvement with that?
Sure. And again, before I dive into the missing child aspect of it, I do want to recognize Jay Concession, our highway supervisor. We have a very professional crew. They take pride in their work. They're dedicated. And it comes down to professionalism, dedication, and training on why we came out the way we did. We didn't waste salt. We didn't throw salt, a ton of salt down. We used it very sparingly, but we used it at the right times. And that's really Jay's leadership and his staff's ability to understand, take those trainings, understand the importance of it, and apply it. And again, so most of the credit on how we did goes to Jay and all his staff. So I just want to make sure that's recognized. So one thing that did happen during the heat of the storm, and again, this is one of the worst storm I've ever worked. Jay might have a difference. He worked both the blizzard of 78 and this storm. But this was a terrible condition. You could not see the plow in front of your truck at times. So during the height of the storm, one of our drivers, Ryan Conway, was plowing a road, and he got flagged down by a parent that they were stuck in the driveway. They couldn't get out. Their son had wandered off. So he immediately called the Emergency Operations Center, which is what we staffed during our winter operations. Deputy Director Greg Swan was there, immediately called the police, relaying information back and forth. But the call was out on the radio, so everyone with the DPW radio was aware of the situation. And Mark Pianadosi, about a mile and a half away, Mark?
Pretty much on the Canton-Stoughton line. Canton Street right at the Stoughton line is where I picked them up.
Yeah, witnessed a small child walking in terrible conditions along the road. Obviously knew something wasn't right, took action, got the child in the truck. Yeah, I think he had a great ride to his home, right? Very exciting, being a big truck. And again, able to safely return the child to the family. And again, a story that didn't have to go to the news for a tragic event. So, kudos to Mark and Ryan for their intervention, and our whole DPW staff for just what they did and their awareness. And
That's really amazing and truly a miracle. I mean, a few minutes one way or the other, you wouldn't have even seen a child on the side of the road, and just, anything could have happened. Wow, really amazing. Thank you so much.
It speaks to the judgment and skills of the team that we have, and we're appreciative of that. So we do have a couple of letters to recognize, one that's to the whole DPW for their response to the snowstorm, as well as one specifically for Mark and Ryan, but I know that Ryan's not able to be with us tonight, but I'm not sure if you want to...
Yeah, I just wanted to see if any of the board members wanted to make comments first, so I'll start with Mark.
That is a harrowing ordeal to listen to. That is incredible. There's no question about it. You absolutely saved a life. Had you not been there at that moment and those actions, Mark, that child could absolutely have lost his life. So thank you. Thank you a million times over. That's incredible. And thank you to the entire DPW for the endless hours and no sleep and keeping the roads clear. It's more appreciated than you know.
Yeah, and Dave, I think you said it well when you mentioned you couldn't see past the plow at some points, right? So, Mark, you're going down the road, and what are the chances, right, that this has the outcome that does? So, thank you. I mean, you guys, and you were everywhere throughout that storm. I mean, in fact, I think it was that storm, and it could have been 3 storms prior, but you guys responding to Southeastern Regional when the alarms are going off over there, and having a plow just to get your own, to get emergency services in there, you had to have DPW there to plow. And I think they broke a water line, inside the building. And it's just amazing. People don't realize how often you guys are brought in on the, first responder side of things. And then there was another event around the corner from my house. A gentleman had a heart attack. You guys had a plow to get, access for emergency services. So thank you for all you do. And that is a story that nobody's going to forget anytime soon. It's amazing, and thinking, that family, I can only imagine how grateful they are that you guys were out there and had radios and heard the call.
I always delight, David, in hearing from my friends in other towns when they complain about their roads. And I can crow about our roads. And Mark, thank you for an incredible job. I'm sure that was a little bit heart-pounding before when you saw the kid.
I actually drove by him 3 times. I thought he was like walking to a friend's house, and then the call came through. I'm like, oh, that's got to be the kid. That's got to be the boy. So yeah, it was. Got him into the truck, and he enjoyed the ride back.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he probably was a lot warmer than when he was outside.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate that. David, Jake, you guys just do an incredible job. I was telling Dave that I took my wife to the hospital in Boston for a procedure, and Easton was like so clear, and I hit Mansfield and Norton. It was like a mess. So I really appreciate what you guys do all the time.
All right, so I will read these or present them. So this first one is for the DPW as a team. Dear Director Field and members of the Department of Public Works, on behalf of the Easton Select Board, we wish to extend our sincere appreciation and gratitude to the entire Department of Public Works for your outstanding service during the extraordinary challenging 2025-2026 snow and ice season. This winter tested the limits of municipal operations, with Easton receiving 71.2 inches of snow the second highest total in the past 14 years, including 9 long-duration storm events, many spanning 14 to 37 hours and requiring extended overnight operations. These conditions placed an exceptional strain on your staff, who nevertheless continued to perform their critical duty and responsibilities without interruption. Because of your commitment, training, and professionalism, Easton remained passable and safe, while many neighboring communities struggled for days with unplowed roads and severe ice pack. DPW crews worked through extreme conditions, including the historic February 2026 blizzard, maintaining road access, preventing dangerous ice formation through judicious salt application, and restoring normal operations far more quickly than some surrounding towns. These outcomes reflect both the dedication of your staff and the town's sustained investment in equipment, fleet maintenance, and employee training. The Select Board recognizes that this exceptional performance was the result of a true team effort, and we commend every member of the Department of Public Works for their resilience, professionalism, and dedication to public service. We also wish to offer special recognition to Highway Supervisor Jay Concession for his exceptional leadership, judgment, and management throughout these demanding events. Please convey our heartfelt thanks to the entire staff. Easton is safer, more resilient, and better served because of your tireless efforts. It's a privilege to acknowledge the outstanding work of all of the Department of Public Works and to express the board's deep appreciation for all that you do for our community with gratitude and respect. And I've signed it on behalf of the Select Board, and Sean signed it as the interim town administrator. So here you go. Next, we have another, we have a citation from Mark, so I will read that. Dear Mark, on behalf of the Easton Select Board, we wish to formally recognize and commend you for your extraordinary actions during the February 22nd, 23rd winter storm, and for the professionalism and compassion you demonstrated while serving the town under exceptionally difficult conditions. During the peak of the storm on Monday afternoon, February 23rd, while you were actively performing snow operations, you responded immediately and decisively to a situation involving a missing child. Amid hazardous weather, limited visibility, and demanding operational responsibilities, your awareness, calm judgment, and swift action helped ensure the safe return of an 8-year-old child to their family. Your conduct exemplifies the highest standards of public service. Your actions went well beyond the scope of routine duties. At a time when conditions were unsafe and resources were stretched, you placed the well-being of a resident first and took the initiative necessary to prevent what could have become a far more serious situation. Thanks to your responsiveness and coordination, a potentially tragic outcome was averted. The Select Board is deeply proud of your service. This incident stands as a powerful reminder that our DPW employees are not only responsible for maintaining infrastructure, but are also trusted stewards of public safety and community care. Please accept our thanks and appreciation for your exemplary conduct and dedication to the residents of Easton. It's an honor to recognize your service. With gratitude and respect, signed by me and Sean Dugan, the interim town administrator.
Sure, yeah.
Come on up. If you could give this to Ryan as well.
Sure. Yeah. I would do it here. I would do it here, and I just go like, take a bench.
Okay.
Just so.
Landscape or portrait?
Landscape, portrait.
I gotta think we gotta squeeze down this little way.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome.
You were with Mark too.
Oh.
Okay, thanks.
I always was unsure about the Big Brother picture.
Big
in the
Brother.
background.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Jay. Sorry to put you in the spotlight. Thank you very much, Mark.
You guys don't have to stay for the whole meeting, but David does.
Elizabeth, did you get my door? I didn't realize it was still open.
Well, what a nice way to start the meeting. I think it's important, you know, there's a lot of great things happening, and I'd like to try to do a better these meetings are usually jam-packed, and I'd like to really try to recognize more of these type of events so that people can see some of these great things that we see in the background.
I think they could very easily fall to the wayside, but giving them the recognition that they deserve is important. So
Right.
thank you for that.
All right, next we have the Arbor Day proclamation. Every year we do this. It's around the time of Earth Day. And Easton is also a Tree City USA, which is a hard designation to get. And we've been a Tree City for quite a while. My neighbor, who used to live across the street from me, Danny Amaram, used to be the tree warden. So he told me all the comings and goings of what the tree wardens do. And it's very fascinating. And Easton should be really proud of the investment that we've made in our treescapes throughout the town. So Craig, if you want to read the proclamation.
Absolutely. Arbor Day Proclamation 2026. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed the first Arbor Day to encourage the planting of trees, a vision that has since inspired generations across the United States to recognize the importance of trees in sustaining life and enriching communities. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed nationwide as a celebration of the enduring value of trees, which provide shade, beauty, habitat, cleaner air, and improved water quality, all while playing a vital role in combating climate change and preserving biodiversity. And whereas the town of Easton, Massachusetts, long recognized for its dedication to conservation, natural beauty, and open spaces, upholds a proud tradition of environmental stewardship through the preservation of parks, woodlands, and greenways for the benefit of current and future generations. And whereas trees contribute to the character and identity of Easton's neighborhoods, enhance the quality of life for all residents, and serve as a living symbol of the town's ongoing commitment to sustainability and ecological responsibility. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Easton, do hereby recognize Friday, April 24th, 2026 as Arbor Day in the Town of Easton, and urge residents to support efforts to protect our natural environment, to plant and care for trees, and to continue fostering a legacy of open space, preservation, and community pride. Given under our hand and seal of the Town of Easton, this 21st day of April in the year of 2026, Dottie Fulgenetti, Craig Barger, Mark Lamb, Jamie Stebbins, and Jennifer Stacy.
Terrific. Anybody have any comments on Arbor Day? All right.
There is the Arbor Day celebration this Friday. Yep, the 24th at 8:30 a.m. The DPW will be planting a sweet gum on Church Street. And there'll be Dave, Todd, and the crew from DPW will be there, as well as myself and maybe some members of the Select Board as well.
Terrific. Excellent. All right. Next, do you want to talk a little bit about the next two items, Sean, for the town election and the town meeting?
Sure. We are rapidly approaching the annual town election. That's next Tuesday, a week from today. Vote by mail ballots came out, and the deadline was last week, and I heard that there was a deluge of them that came in. So that process is well underway. Our municipal red book is out and has hit the mailboxes. Today was actually the 7-day deadline that needed to be met to be in mailboxes 1 week prior to the election. So that's been met as well. That has the yes and the no argument for both questions, as well as the summary of both questions. And so I hope that voters have what they need to be able to make an informed decision, as well as the information that's available on our website, easton.ma.us/override. But next Tuesday, our polls will be open for those that wish to vote in person, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Oliver Ames High School, as is typically the case. That's the default date. And then annual town meeting will be whatever comes of the 2 ballot questions. If 1, 2, or neither, whatever happens on the 28th will be incorporated into the one budget that we vote at annual town meeting on May 18th, which is at 7 p.m. at Oliver Ames High School. And the deadline to register to vote at annual town meeting is May 8th.
Great.
Lots of deadlines coming up.
Yes, and so if people want to learn more about it, you can, for voting, you can do www.easton.ma.us/vote, And for town meeting, www.easton.ma.us/town meeting. And if anybody has any questions, now that we're down to the wire, please reach out to the select board. Feel free to reach out to the DPW director, reach out to the police chief, the fire chief. They're taking calls, answering questions. So if you want to hear it directly from the source, please contact them directly. There's very high stakes in this. You know, people that are watching see that there's overrides being requested all over the state. We listened to what the community told us last year. We've pared it down to what we hope is reasonable. It's less than $20 a month, and that would be for a police, fire, and DPW. We all want good roads. This is the way that we're going to get it. You know, it feels like every community, it's like the services are becoming a la carte. What we're trying to do is really identify what are the important pieces of this and have people understand them and vote accordingly. So we know that not everybody, even if it's $20 a month, might not be good for their family, but we do hope that people will consider all the facts and make their vote and come out and vote. It's just really important. And also voting for the town elections with people running for office, although it's uncontested, these are people that work really hard for our community, so please come out and show them your appreciation by casting a vote. So next we have one-day liquor licenses. The first one is the Equestrian Team Banquet at Stonehill College, 320 Washington Street, and it's April 26th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. with a rain date of April 27th. Can I just list these all and do them as a slate?
Yeah.
The next one is the reunion reception at Stonehill in the Meehan Building, 320 Washington Street, May 29th from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. with a rain date of May 30th. The reunion mixer at Stonehill College, this is at May Hall, 320 Washington Street, May 29th from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. with a rain date of May 30th. And the reunion barbecue at Stonehill College Quad, 320 Washington Street, May 30th, 2026 from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And the rain date is May 31st. So Craig, if you want to make a motion to approve these as a slate.
So I move to approve the one-day liquor licenses from Stonehill College as a slate.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Barger and Stebbins, starting with you, Mark.
Lamb, yes. Slate, Lamb, Slate.
Stebbins, slate.
Full Genetti slate.
Barger, slate.
Terrific. All right, on to the action and discussion. The first item is discussion and vote for Fontaine Brothers. It's change order number 8 for the public safety buildings.
Good evening.
Good morning. Good evening, Mitch. How are you?
Good. How's everybody doing? Not sure if everybody's met Jim before, but Jim Allison with KBA. Filling
Hey,
in for
Jim.
Greg tonight.
Hi, Jim.
Real.
Thanks for being here.
All right. So yeah, the first one we have is change order number 8. The total amount of change order number 8 is $161,978,000. It's compromise of 14 individual PCOs. I think the last time I checked it was 14. So as of April 13th, when the letter was put together, there's 62.5 of the contract time has elapsed. 4.5 of the owner contingency will have been expended, with 90.7 held in reserve for known risks. Inside of that change order number 8 are those PCOs, and there's quite a few, and it's quite a large number. I know the agenda is packed tonight, but I'll try not to be too wordy.
Gotcha.
So PCO number 33, PD locker room revisions. So these were to replace civilian lockers with duty lockers, inclusive of carpentry, HVAC, and electrical. So it was from 10 to 7. That total cost was $4,864. The next PCO is the larger one, making up a majority of this change order, is number 38, revision 1. This was for National Grid utility revisions for both of the sites, Main Street and Depot Street. So a lot of the times the design will show the electrical plan for underground, for the transformer location, for the manholes needed, but then working with the utility companies, they have their own design and design criteria that we have to follow. So between KBA and their electrical engineer and N-Grid, there was revisions that had to be made to accommodate N-Grid at all sites. So that's what this number is inclusive of. So it's $137,631. The next one is PCO 51, public safety bunk room modifications. So we had some changes, moving a couple doors, locker removal at public safety. So Jim, these were changed from bunk rooms to officer rooms, is that right?
Essentially, there was two individual bunk rooms that were reduced down to an office with an attached bunk. So a slight rework of some doors, and then a large reduction in the number of lockers that we had in the area servicing the fire.
Yep, so this one actually worked out to be a credit of minus $2,012. The next PCO was 54, number 26, FD bunk locker room revisions. So the bunk room locker removal based on the layout. So kind of similar to the previous one, there were some modifications made at the fire bunk rooms as well. And this was a reduction as well of $54,014. The following PCO is 57. So public safety kitchen hydration modifications. So this is just a plumbing change. So there's an added fill station that is included in this PCO for $2,398. A bottle fill station, I should clarify. Next PCO is number 62. Radio tower footing winter conditions. So the radio tower over at Main Street, that did not get bid out as part of our contract documents. So that was a change order that we previously approved. This winter conditions is strictly for Fontaine had warned us that heading into the winter, that there could be winter conditions, meaning tarping, heating, scaffolding to hold the heat, because the concrete pad is so large for this antenna that it has to have certain curing requirements. So that's what this number is inclusive of, 14,863. The next one is number 69, the fire station roof hatch orientation. So this was just kind of making access to the roof easier. The hatch needed to be rotated 180 degrees based on the design to more easily access the roof and the walk pads on the roof. So that was for 1,203. Next one is number 73, asphalt aprons at entrances. So this is specific to Depot Street. There's a nice sidewalk that was going along the front of Depot Street, and when the contractor put in their temp roads, that kind of got ripped up, and our plans didn't necessarily show that sidewalk getting back in during the construction. So we wanted to bring that back up and make that sidewalk accessible. So this is for asphalt aprons at those locations to make the path more accessible for $12,664. Number 76 is a shade modification at the virtual trainer room at public safety. So this is a room that police is going to use for some of their VR training. Just adding blackout shades to make it better for the training. They use virtual reality for that, and that was for an add of $774. Number 80 is the fire station kitchen hydration modification. So as the previous one that I was talking about, there was some changes in the fridge location, and that added bottle fill station. This is the electrical portion to that for $2,469. And then the next one is 84. This is for the monorail cranes in the bays at the fire station and public safety. They were included at DPW, but they were not included for the fire station and DPW, and we figured that they would be necessary to have in the project. So that was for an add of $41,128. And the last three you see on here are just $0 PCOs, meaning that Fontaine is saying there's no cost to do this work. So I won't go into too much detail on that. And that's change order number 8.
Great.
Jim, question on the end grid, the 137,000. Expected, greater than typical? I mean, I know there's a number you guys put together in advance.
Sure.
And yeah, give me your experience on that delta.
You said just cost for that change?
Yeah, yep.
I'll
I'd
jump
say
in.
it was kind of expected for what the revisions that were included in this revision. I'd say that cost is expected for what that is.
So there's a few added manholes per their requirements, which are large structures like 4x8 in the ground in the roadway. There were some conduit revisions per their requirement. And think about the run that goes all the way out to DPW to make those revisions. So those site work costs are included in this PCO as well. And that's kind of for Depot Street. And then at Main Street too, there was some shuffling of pole locations. So different electrical underground pathways that they needed to follow per end grid. So it was a little bit off over at Fire Substation from what we had shown on the plans. And then those revisions added site work costs, electrical costs, and then kind of similar around DPW as well, Depot Street.
Okay.
Kind of expected.
Yeah.
Okay,
What
meaning
to-
you guys give it your best shot up front and then,
Exactly. We kind of have to do a layout design, and then their designers and engineers look at it again and make adjustments, and you kind of have to deal with the delta between the two.
yeah, and I'll say this for anyone that is listening, that we know Ingrid is very difficult to get their time and attention, and you guys have waited over at the substation to get hooked up over there as well, so I understand that it's not like an easy call and,
Yes.
let's get
A lot of
in
back.
advance more information that's not always available to you.
Yeah, the information kind of trickles. So.
Yep. So that's to be fair to you guys, that I know you're doing your best with the limited information that you get and can get.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Well, I think being at 4.5% of owner contingency at 62.5% of the contract time is amazing. So, looking at these in the scope of how they relate to the full cost of the project seems pretty modest. And I know this changes as you go along, especially as you get closer to the punch list at the end. But I'm very happy with the progress on this.
Awesome.
Mark, anything from you?
Nope, same. Fantastic job. Thank you.
All right, Craig?
No, I'll just do a motion to approve Fontaine Brothers change order number 8, public safety buildings, in the amount of $161,978.
Second, Stebbins.
So that's Bodger and Stebbins, and a roll call vote starting with you, Mark.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
Terrific. It's unanimous. All right, next we have a discussion and vote for consulting engineering services, CES contract amendment number 1 for the public safety buildings.
Yep, so this amendment would be an amendment to the agreement that is with CES and PMA. They are under a sub-agreement right now with us for the commissioning services for all the buildings, part of the project. This amendment covers the blower door test, which is a stretch code requirement which measures the air leakage in the building. So we didn't initially cover this as a service with CES, and then it wasn't covered with the general contractor as well. And it's kind of a conflict of interest having the general contractor do the own blower door test. So we said, we'll see if CES can do it. They can provide that service, and that is what this amendment is for. So we are recommending that the $24,000 plus the 10% PMA subconsultant markup be approved to cover the cost of all 3 buildings for the blower door tests. This would leave $322,422 in the soft cost contingency, and then the full $9 million of bid savings would remain to be utilized if needed, leaving a total of $9,365,009. So this is pretty straightforward. We've gone through this. We've worked with CES in the past. They're on this project now as a commissioning agent. We feel very comfortable that they're going to be able to provide this service for us at the proposal included.
Seems very reasonable for the 3 buildings.
What are the blower door?
Yeah, so they cover a couple of doors, depending on how big the building is, and then they put a big fan on it, and they suck the air out of the building to measure the leakage in the building. And they have a manometer, maybe it's a
I can't.
yeah,
Sounds about right.
There's a
an official name.
measuring device that's calibrated to measure the leakage in the building.
So we're getting an efficiency rating based on this, okay,
Find any little weaknesses and seal them up.
okay.
Make this
So
building
this
as
is
tight as
done,
possible.
this is done after the windows or doors are all in, so it's at the end of the project, is that?
Yeah. So, for example, they'll want to do it at Main Street within the next month or so here, because they have the windows and doors in there, and so they're available to do this test over there. And if we get them signed up, we'll get them scheduled and have them perform there.
Great.
Excellent.
Terrific. All right, Craig?
So I move to approve the consulting engineering service contract amendment number 1, public safety buildings blower door testing, in the amount of $24,000 plus the 10% PMA sub-consultant markup.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
Terrific. It's unanimous. Next, we have discussion and vote contract DPW 2026-21. This is with Apex Steering Services for sewer in the industrial park design. Did I miss one?
The
Firematic.
Oh,
Firematic.
geez.
Sorry, you
All
got us.
right.
You got us for another one. Number 8.
Number 8.
I'm glad I have people to catch me on these. Discussion and vote contract with Firematic Supply Company for Easton Fire Substation. And
Thank you. So yeah, this one is being procured through KBA. I'll give an intro and then Jim can fill me in if I missed anything. But it's for a Firematic Supply Company for equipment, Firematic equipment at both the fire substation and public safety building. So the Firematic Supply Company will be providing 2 SCBA gear sanitizers as well as hose washer for public safety. So the SCBA gear sanitizers will be at fire substation and public safety, and then the hose washer will be at public safety. And that grand total of the contract recommended is $111,227. Anything you want to add?
I guess unless you're interested in knowing what the SCB gear sanitizer is, I can dive into that, but
Sure. I think people would want to know
so
what that
SCB,
is.
SCBA is short for self-contained breathing apparatus. It's the breathing mask and packs that the firefighters wear. When they come back, those have to go into a specialized machine to be able to sanitize them and get all the carcinogens and stuff off of them, so they don't go into the next fire and start breathing the same carcinogens they're trying to keep out. So it's a specialized machine that goes into each of those stations, which hence the fairly decent price tag on it. So those go in, they basically superheat them, kind of like you would for like a basically a very like advanced washer machine essentially. So it just basically pulls all that chemical and disease, germs off them.
And is that just for the breathing apparatus, or does it include like the
It's the,
gear itself, the jackets and all
It's
that
not
stuff?
the jackets; those go into a separate machine called an gear extractor. So this is just for the mask and the packs itself.
Great.
Yep.
The turnout gear is also included in this.
I believe they have a separate.
It's not in this package.
Not this specific one.
Okay,
But yes,
okay.
that's a separate item.
Well, that's something that was really important to us when we were talking about the benefits of having a project like this, is that there's no place in the old stations to be able to do this kind of sanitizing the equipment, and they're putting on dirty clothes to go back out that have the carcinogens on them. So that's why I think it's important to call that out, because this is a really big deal. The environmental conditions that our fire service faces are very dangerous in a number of ways, but their breathing and their incidence of respiratory problems from firefighting, hopefully this can help
Yes,
a little
agreed.
bit. Great.
I think it's critical. We've had this conversation many times, so I move to approve the contract with Firematic Supply Company for Easton Fire Substation in the amount of $111,227.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
Okay. Now we're on to 9. Discussion. Thank you for being here. Discussion and vote for contract DPW 2026-21, Apex Engineering Services for sewer on the sewer industrial park design.
Good evening again. So this is a contract with Apex Engineering. They were the successful proposers in our RFP we did last year for the industrial park sewer, which is going to be connected with our IMA with Brockton. We were holding off trying to wait for some grant funding, and that hasn't happened yet. So we're releasing the first phase of work to line up with our IMA with Brockton. We need to have the sewer up and running in about 3 years. So this first phase is basically pre-designed stuff, borings, things like that. The phase 1 fee of $435,700 will be funded out of a $2.2 million appropriation from town meeting last year.
Okay.
So we're still waiting on the federal match to the $1 million that we got from the state, contingent upon the federal grant.
We're still holding out hope, and that's why we've released this package so far. If we don't hear anything by June, we're probably going to go and recommend award of the remainder of the contract. But we're just trying to give it extra time.
Okay, understandable. Any other?
No questions. Thanks, David.
So I move to approve the contract DPW 2026-21 Apex Engineering Services for sewer industrial park design, phase 1, the amount of $435,700.
Second, Stebbins.
So that's Bodger and Stebbins?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
All right, item 10, discussion and vote contract DPW 2022-05, change order number 3, Hart Engineering Corp. For Red Mill Road Water Plant.
So as you know, the Red Mill Road water treatment plant's been complete for some time, but the final completion with the contractor hasn't happened yet until now. So it's taken some time for punch lists and things like that. So this is basically a change order, which has various small items in it and a bunch of credits and balancing change order for overall reduction of the contract, construction contract by $53,807. And it wraps up and finalizes our construction contract, bringing the total project cost to $12,119,418.17, which is slightly below our original contract cost of $12,123,900. So overall, this completes our project.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
We'll take any savings we can get, and it's still a significant savings, so.
So I move to approve contract DPW 2022-05, CO number 3, Hart Engineering Corp., Red Mill Road Water Plant, and reduces the value of the contract by $53,807.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
And just on that subject, just wanted to kind of call out for people, if you're following any kind of PFAS construction, and especially in the southeast region, and you look at other towns that are doing this, the costs to build these PFAS treatment facilities now are unbelievable, like 4 or 5 times this amount for this type of work. So I also want to just give a shout out for the whole team, including the select board, for really understanding this issue, really working on it to make sure that we were one of the first to be able to advance this. It saved us a lot of money by doing this, and being able to get some of the materials. Some of these weren't even being built yet until we started, so it really was, by being able to get this done and get it done fast, we saved millions of dollars for the town, and your leadership and Connor was really helpful to get there.
Yeah, it's been a great project. Again, this project has been in the master plan for a long time, as the green sand to remove iron and manganese, and there's still an ongoing PFAS project at Red Mill Road, but it's not the Red Mill Road construction cost, so I don't want to confuse the two. But that project is ongoing. It should be wrapped up hopefully this year.
Great.
And
Awesome.
we'll be fully in compliance with Massachusetts regulations and the proposed federal regulations.
Terrific. That's great news. Awesome. All right.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on to planning.
Yep.
Discussion and vote on PCD 2026-07 for MVP 2.0 seed project for residential tree maintenance. Hello. Thanks for being here tonight.
All right, good evening, members of the board. We have 2 contracts here that are going to come up that we're requesting a vote on. These are either extensions or continuations of existing contracts or grants that we have currently operating. So these are nothing new, but just extensions or continuations of existing ones that we have. And I have here with our environmental land use planner, Jennifer Carlino, any particular questions related to those, because these are coming from the environmental side.
Okay. Do you want to tell us about the projects?
Yes. So this actually furthers the Tree City goals that we just talked about. The MVP 2.0 project is a continuation of the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Project. In our discussions with core team members and community liaisons, we settled on a tree care project. And so we're working on an educational document for residents. We will have 2 demonstrations with arborists at the NRT event on May 2nd. We're also working with arborists and Kristen's department on helping some underserved folks in town be able to get the necessary tree pruning or removal if those projects are needed. This is entirely funded through an MVP grant. There is no funding coming from the town for this project.
Okay. So just for people that might not know what the Municipal Vulnerability Program is at home, we were also, again, one of the first communities to really jump on this initiative. So the state was giving grants for communities to really bring their members and residents and businesses, everybody together to talk about where are the vulnerabilities environmentally in your community, and also as it relates to emergency response for weather, weather situations and things like that. It started before COVID when we did the MVP one. So, after that, it really gave everybody a whole new lens on the emergency aspect of this. What do you do if you have to get a whole group of your community vaccinated? Like, it really brought in some more of the wellness, environmental parts of it as well. But I remember being a member of the first MVP one when lots of people from the town came in. These are really community-driven initiatives. They're not, they're guided by consultants, but the community feedback is really what shapes these. And it's really very exciting to see that once we do these kinds of plans with a grant, they'll give you grant funding to check off some of these initiatives. So you have gotten a few of these grants, it's great, especially when we don't have grant writers. So congratulations on that. But this sounds like a really great opportunity for us to follow up on our heritage and history of preservation, agricultural trees, things like that.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to implement a project that you already, you've done the plan. Now the fun part is implementing it.
Right. Okay. And so I'm trying to scan through here to see if there's anything else. Did you want to mention anything else on that, or are you ready for us to vote on it?
Oh, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay.
I'll underscore actually that this project that was decided on was, to your point, Dottie, to underscore the community involvement. It was a project that was developed after many months of community feedback. There was both internally staff on our side as well as some members of the public that helped get us to this specific project. And so we weeded through and we had social, equity, environment, a whole bunch of different lenses that it was looked at, and so it came through a long process to get to this particular project. And I feel like that was worth mentioning, that it wasn't just something that was picked out of a hat. It was something that was chosen with care.
Okay. And you said what was the date?
May 2nd.
May 2nd at NRT. So maybe we can socialize that on social media for awareness for people. Mm-hmm. And the partners in this are the DPW, the Tree Warden, and the Garden Club. I think I'd love to see that the Garden Club is involved in this. They're a very influential group in Easton and dedicated, so this is terrific. All right, Craig?
So I move to approve contract PCD 2026-07 MVP 2.0 Seed Project Residential Tree Maintenance 101 in the amount of $50,000.
Second, Stebbins.
So that's Barger and Stebbins?
Bam, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
Terrific. All right, the next one is discussion and vote PCD 2026-08, the Sam Wright Field, continuation of ecological restoration. So we have a memo and a contract in here if you want to run us through this.
Do the first part, or? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. This is also a project that's been going on for several years. The Sam Wright Field is located on Bay Road, and it's mostly fields. The wetland restoration and floodplain restoration takes place, or has taken place, along Mulberry Brook. This is a continuation of the project in order to remove one of these small culverts to continue with the restoration of wetland and increase the flood compensation area to prevent downstream flooding. The funding for this so far has come from the Nature Conservancy and the MVP grant program. This portion of the project is for our consultant BSC group to They've already finished the bid documents. Now we need to send them to town council. BSC will go out to bid for us, provide bid recommendations, and then construction monitoring services for the culvert removal and the additional wetland and floodplain restoration portion of that project. Currently, all the funding we have is from the Nature Conservancy. We do not have funding for the actual construction. We have requested funding through our Congressman Lynch's office. The Nature Conservancy will continue to work with us to try to find donors for that project. We kind of lost that funding in last year's pause, so we're getting the project to where we can bid, know the actual cost, and then continue to fundraise. This is not something currently requesting town funds. This is paid for through the Nature Conservancy right now.
Terrific.
And Congressman Lynch has been very, very helpful in a number of areas, so it's
Yes.
exciting that you're reaching out to him to
Yeah.
see if he can help us with this. So I move to approve PCD 2026-08, Sam Wright Field Continuation, Ecological Restoration Design Services with BSC Group, in total amount of $40,907 through the grant. No operational funds from the town. It's important.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Bodger, yes.
Great. All right, next we have acceptance of conservation land donation, 456 Depot Street.
Conservation Commission was approached by a property owner with 5.58 acres of land on Depot Street, requesting to donate that for conservation purposes, which means it is for natural resource protection. If passive recreation is consistent with that natural resource protection, then that can also be included. This particular property is mostly wetland and floodplain. It has 2 streams that go through it, a really cool knoll, lots of wildlife tracking through it. It abuts other conservation property, would help funnel our wildlife across the street so that they're crossing in one spot, fewer roadkill. It scored as the highest priority on our land evaluation criteria that we set up a few years ago. It meets many of the open space and recreation plan goals. Mentioned a few of the unique features, the 2 streams and the knoll, but we also have a number of American holly and some musclewood trees on the property, which is not that common in the area. The property would remain as a wildland. When we look at our conservation property, we try to have a mix of wildlands, wooded areas where there is some recreation, and then a more higher recreation use. This particular property would be more in the wildland area, so there's no anticipated management costs for that property. It would just be wildlife. We don't anticipate creating new trails on the property at this time. And so there's no long-term costs associated with that.
And is there a plan to designate so people can see it as they go by? They know that this is a conservation area?
Yes, we'll add a sign at some point.
And I saw from the material that we had that the Concom folks had gone and walked through it to make sure there wasn't any trash or any of that kind
Correct.
of stuff on it,
Yes.
which is good.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that was one of my questions. So there's no cost to do any type of remediation or any perk testing. Did you guys do that? Is there perk testing that was done to make sure there was no underground, any contamination, anything like that?
So perk testing, the
Well,
way I know
probably
it
not
is
using the right
normally through
terminology,
or
but
like a septic system, but we don't typically do groundwater testing or soil testing, anything like that. Walking the property, there was nothing to suggest that there was any contamination. There's no barrels. There's nothing that it wasn't previously a gas station. There wasn't anything that would spark, oh, we should take a much closer look at like a 21E style evaluation.
How far is it from the Gill property that the town acquired or purchased? Because I see the address. What's the current police fire station? Is
570 and 580 Depot.
570, 580, and this is
456.
456. Just curious because obviously they ran a farm over there and a lot of solid waste, a lot of agricultural waste.
It's almost across from, I can't read.
It's across from Blackbrook.
Blurry.
It's right across the street
I think
from
it's from
Blackbrook.
Blackbrook.
Right,
Yeah.
across from Blackbrook.
So
So it's further down.
Okay, and if in the future, if, let's just say there was any, would we be on the hook for cleaning up if some contamination were discovered, any water was found to be contaminated, polluted, anything like that? Are we then on the hook as a town once we receive this?
I don't know that we have any more liability than any other town property. I don't think so.
Okay, so we assume the risk though, right? Because it'll be our land now. Last question. To register it as wetlands, is there a cost associated with that? Are we,
I'm not sure. Would you
meaning,
register it?
so once we assume this land, and it's becomes deeded to us, right? What other cost to ownership or to transitioning the land to us? Is there any other costs associated?
Just the recording at the registry, so $125 that would come out of the Conservation Commission Fund.
Okay.
So this doesn't need a conservation restriction on it?
No, just by ownership of the Conservation Commission, the property is protected by Article 97, and that has now changed to the Public Land Protection Act, as well as the Conservation Commission Act. So it doesn't need an extra layer of protection in a conservation restriction. It's all just the fact that it's conservation land, not wetland, conservation land. It's permanently protected from a conversion of any other type of use, and any sort of construction. It's just for conservation purposes, so it doesn't need a conservation restriction.
Mark, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm just listening to the questions you guys all have.
I guess my question, and we talked about this, but I think people are going to be interested in this. So this is wetlands, or the property owner can't do anything with this. They can't build on it anyway. So what's the importance of the town taking this versus them keeping it? Because taking I'm thinking beyond this particular situation. This happens every so often where we're asked to take a little piece of land here, a little piece of land there. They're not all the same. Sometimes there might be potential liabilities on them. Sometimes there aren't. What is the benefit to the town taking this versus saying no? Because if it's already in a wetlands or a conservation area, you can't build on it anyway. So the owner, nothing changes, right? Animals are still going to get through that pathway. What do people need to know about that?
So wetlands don't always stay that way. So our wetland boundaries are only good for 3 years because wetlands can change. It's a dynamic system. And how many times have we heard, oh, they can't build anything on that property, it's all wetland, and then when you do the actual evaluation, the wetlands have changed and people can build on it. So this property, we were requested to purchase 2 parcels of land. The Conservation Commission said, we understand concerns about taking land off the tax rolls, and perhaps one of the lots could be offered to the adjacent property owner, and then those taxes would continue to stay on the town's tax rolls. But the other portion of the property that is mostly wetland but has these significant features, including the floodplain, would be better preserved by the town and remain as something that can't be converted later on. In my experience, when a willing property owner is trying to preserve land, whether they can do something on it or they can't, if the town does not take that land as a donation, then frequently they'll just stop paying taxes on it. And then there is a cost to the town to take the land for tax title purposes and then either try to sell it at auction. There's always a cost to the town that way. So to have that positive impact with the property owner where they are able to donate property maybe that provides them with a write-off on their taxes or gives them that feeling that they're doing something good in preserving land that is sometimes worth a couple $100 not being on the tax roll.
Yep.
I've never asked this question. Maybe you guys can answer, maybe you can't.
We'll try.
As the homeowner donates this 5 and however many acres, they were paying taxes on it, but is it reduced because they can't build on it, can't do anything? Do you pay the same tax rate as you do for your buildable upland?
I'm not sure that's something I can answer. The assessors.
Wendy could.
Yeah,
Okay.
So the value is decreased on that property. So the taxes on that property in question are $605 a year.
Got it.
So-
That makes, you answered my question.
Yeah, the value's about
At
$48,000.
the same time, I can't imagine them carrying it if they were being charged what we're charged for,
Right.
buildable lots in town. So thank you.
Good question.
Well, I appreciate your, in the narrative, including, because I think we're going to be looking a lot more at what the cost is and what is the maintenance for any kind of land that's donated. We want to make sure that we're not taking on a financial liability, as I'm sure you can understand. So letting us know, what the maintenance plan is for any properties that might come up in the future. Like, this would be the best practice, I think, that we're looking at, so that we can make sure that it's defensible to the community when people say, why did you take that land? We have plenty of conservation land and, and they're legitimate questions. I'm not being sarcastic when I say that for anybody that's watching. We do want to make sure that we're talking about this so people do understand the process behind it.
And we do have a whole process that we give to people. It's written down. This is the process for donating land. I will do a site inspection. We will make sure that taxes are paid. You need to have clear title. We do walk the property. It's not a willy-nilly, hey, great, let's just take some land, accept some land. We do internally have a process as well. And the Conservation Commission has also said no to other properties. So they're only bringing forward the ones that we think are either we have the funding for or they're an important enough parcel that we should move forward with accepting a donation. So.
All right. Craig?
So I move to accept conservation land donation at 456 Depot Street.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins. Mark?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
All right.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
You too.
All right, next, the grant acceptance for new water and ice rescue equipment, Department of Fire Services.
Yes, on behalf of Chief Alexander, we were notified by our state representative, Lisa Field, that the Department of Fire Services awarded the department $15,391 grant to be used towards water and ice rescue, and where required, the board is required to accept grants that are presented to us, and this is the one that's before you.
All right, that's great news.
I think that's a terrific job. So I move to approve grant, new water and ice rescue equipment for the Department of Fire Services to our fire department in the amount of $15,391.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
Terrific.
Forget where I'm sitting at right now, man.
All right, we have continued discussion for the fiscal year 2027 override and budget update. Learn more about the fiscal 27 budget at www.easton.ma.us/budget.
Thank you, Dottie. This is a continued agenda item that we've had on over the past couple of months, and we're actually coming towards the close. There's a light at the end of the tunnel as we approach the election in the town meeting in April and May. The House budget did come out last week, and there were some promising numbers that came from that. The one that got the most attention was the per pupil cost being $160 versus the $75 that was included in the governor's budget. That was very great to see. So we're updating our numbers. And then the Senate is also expected to vote in the coming weeks on their version, which will then force a conference committee, and they'll hash out the differences between the two. But like I said, Finance Director Nightingale and I are updating the budget summary, and we anticipate having Budget Change Memo 2 presented to you on May 4th, which will be inclusive of those changes as well as the outcome of any override amounts that were passed at the April 28th election.
Terrific.
That's the highest it's ever been, right? 160, 150
It was
the
150
previous
last year,
high?
yep.
Right.
Previous highest, okay.
And that's the House budget. The Senate has not yet dealt with that.
Correct.
At this point, okay. Although I know we had a conversation with our state senator, and he was there when the House representatives indicated what they were recommending. So we're hoping that the Senate will do the same, if not more.
Yeah. The House budget nets us between revenue and assessments $220,000 additional over the governor's budget.
Notably, our unrestricted general government aid, our UGA funds went down, but our Chapter 70 went up. So.
Do we know how much it went down by? What was that?
Not much. It was a couple thousand.
No, I got 47,389.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at
Over
something from there.
that was veterans benefits.
What's the net increase to us potentially?
So the net increase is 220. So overall on revenue, it increased 341,532, but assessments also went up by 120,994. So the net is 220,538.
Wouldn't it be easier if they just gave every municipality $1 million and called it a day?
Just got to check.
I'm going to put that in the message box.
Just make it simple for everyone.
It'll be under 400 million, right? So, well, that's good. And thank you to our legislators. I know that we got calls from both Lisa Field and Bridget Plouffe, very excited about the House voting on that. So we're hoping that our Senate comes in strong on that as well, but they're all seeing it. They represent multiple communities, and every community is struggling with Chapter 70, and more are included in that foundation formula now than they have before. So, or minimum aid community.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Two-thirds of cities and towns are now minimum aid,
Right.
which is incredible.
So it's not good news.
No.
Especially when we had the legislation to create the so-called millionaires tax to put money into education and transportation. Because of the status of Easton being a minimum aid community, we don't really see too much of that money. So it's good that they're thinking about that. Great.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on?
I guess I'll just mention that even though we've said it a million times, that you can find all the information on the FY27 operating budget at easton.ma.us/budget. And then, like I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we have a page dedicated just to the FY27 override, and that's at easton.ma.us/override.
And just, for people that have questions about the budget and say, they want to see how we're spending money and what are we spending money on, click that link to the budget and go through it. It's hundreds of pages, but it's organized very well by department, and you can go on and you can see every line item. The town side of the budget, we are not allowed to take money and move it around between budget line items. So what you see is what you get. You'll see, the budget line item down to the office supplies of everything, all the salaries, all the equipment costs, you name it. And it's very interesting. So I would ask people, if you have questions about it and you don't want to call us or call the department heads, look at the budget, and I'm sure your answer is in there. But if not, we're always happy to answer, any of us.
Absolutely.
All right, the May 18th, 2026 annual town meeting warrant review.
Okay, we have a marathon of articles that we're considering tonight, and we have I have a number of my colleagues here to be able to speak to them. And first up, we have a couple related to Wendy, Article 4 and Article 8. Wendy's going to take.
So Article 4 is the payment of bills from a prior fiscal year. We actually do have some bills this time around. We have two bills. They're from Weston and Sampson. They're related to our sewer enterprise fund. They total $37,184.42. This can be funded from sewer surplus, so it won't have an impact on the general fund. The sewer surplus that was certified is like well over $1 million, so we certainly have the funds, and there would have been funds in the budget to cover this last year anyway. This vendor is not always consistent in sending us invoices either on a timely basis or like following up with statements, so these ended up falling through the cracks, but we certainly have the funds to be able to take care of these bills at town meeting.
Okay, great. Do you want us to vote to include and recommend?
Yes.
I move to include and recommend Article 4, payment of bills from a prior fiscal year, in the amount of $37,184.42.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
All right, Article 8.
Okay, so Article 8 is an article that we had put in to fund additional elections. This kind of stems back to when we did the preliminary budget, and we were looking to basically cut out anything that was non-recurring, and in this case, we had two specific elections that don't recur every year. So we had decided that we would take out those elections and fund those separately and just have the annual town election in the budget. However, since this latest budget proposal has come out, we think we probably should just try to put it back into the budget and just fund it that way, so that we don't have to do an annual article. But at the beginning of the year, when we were doing the preliminary budget, the situation was pretty dire, and we were trying to scrimp every penny we could. But I would like to put that just back into the budget. So what I would recommend is that, well, the article is already written, but I would just propose that at town meeting, we would dismiss this article, and in the budget change memo, we'll address putting this funding back into the town clerk's budget.
Any questions?
So we're just going to include this but not recommend? Or
Well, we could recommend.
you want to include and recommend, and then you'll,
You can include it and recommend it, and then you can just move to dismiss it
at town
meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
And you think, again, Wendy, just the benefit is, because that night it'll be a little bit confusing for people maybe when we do that, but the reason, what's the benefit of doing it this way again?
So the benefit of it's just to keep it in the town clerk's budget so that we don't have to do a special article every year.
Got it. Then that's my question. Okay, great.
Okay, so I move to include and recommend Article 8.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
All right. Article 9, Stormwater Utility Bylaw.
We have Dave here, our Director of Public Works. If you have any questions related to the two, it's broken out, as we know, the Stormwater Utility Bylaw is Article 9, and then there's a separate article, Article 10, to establish the enterprise fund. I know that we had a presentation at a recent meeting, and that just follows up based on and that's based on the recommendation of the Stormwater Utility Steering Committee. And so we're just looking for a vote to include and recommend tonight.
And speaking of stormwater utility, I just want to, for those that didn't see the presentation at our last meeting, it is available on ECAT. It's very interesting. And I want to thank Jim Hamilton for his extraordinary work on that committee. He did a really great job, and I appreciate him putting the time on that. He took meticulous notes and really put 100% in on that. And I just want to give him a shout out for that on top of his school committee role. So.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to mention that we do have a webpage. You brought up a good point about all the information and all the work of the Stormwater Utility Steering Committee. So Dave has populated that page with a whole bunch of information, all the presentations that they went through, FAQ on what a stormwater utility is and what it entails. And we have a webpage for that, and it's easton.ma.us/stormwater-utility. Rolls off the tongue. We're going to do some outreach via the crier, and there has been some on social media as well to hopefully lead people to the information to make an informed decision at town meeting. Okay. Sorry, Jamie.
No, I was going to say this kind of ties into 10 as well. So tell me, you can stop me if you want me to wait, but we're going to have a presentation at town meeting as well to go through and explain to everybody what.
Yeah. Yep.
What do you?
I think it's one of those things that's not just like common knowledge. So having a brief presentation would be helpful.
In a perfect world, everyone would go to the web pages that already exist with all the information and all the presentations that have been given, and it's all there.
Right.
We just know that night.
And a lot of the questions that would come up in a presentation like that are going to answer most of the basic questions that people will have about that they might have heard and been misinformed on. And so Dave will cover all those in a presentation that will hopefully make the questions fewer than they might have otherwise been if we didn't do the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
So I move to include and recommend Article 9.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
All right, Article 10 is establishing the Stormwater Management Operations Enterprise Fund. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory, and we just spoke about it.
Yep.
So, Craig?
So I move to include and recommend Article 10.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
All right, Article 11, Amendment of Meetings, Annual Town Election Bylaw. This is a fun one.
Yes, this is a follow-up to the discussion that we had at a recent meeting of ours. And thanks again to our town clerk, Danielle Sicard, for helping us get all the information we needed for the board to have the discussion. I'm just going to take this one. It really, Article 11 now is just, we gave you an updated version that shows the strike-throughs and the changes, so it's easier for voters to understand. It's different than the one that was in your packet. That one was inclusive of all the changes being accepted. The new version that's in front of you in paper and what will be distributed in the future moving forward shows those changes and what they are. So this would just change the annual town election date to be standard on the second Tuesday in May, and then the time frame that you can typically choose from now, that's the 15th through the 30th, will now become April 27th to the, I have to read this so I can not get it wrong, the Saturday before the annual town meeting. So, that could fluctuate from year to year. So just be those two changes, the standard date and the time frame that it's within. And that's how the article is written. It's just presented differently in the paper version that you have in front of you.
I'll just say this is great because I know it took us an hour, and Danielle was very kind to be here and let us, again, I needed crayons and to go through this and figure it out. And a whiteboard would have been nice. Sure. This is great because it really does make complete sense now. And for all those parents out there, it's no longer tucks the day of the election, either right as you're coming back from this week of spring vacation, and it just gives a little bit of a buffer to families and everybody to get out there, including people running for elected office.
It also presents a good opportunity for folks to be closer to annual town meetings. So you're going through the budget process, members of the finance committee and the select board, school committee, everyone goes through the process further into the year. And then if there is a potential change in seats, then that's made right before town meeting, as opposed to right now. It's the annual town election date. There's still 3 weeks until town meeting from when the election is. So it tightens that time frame.
All right.
So I move to include and recommend Article 11.
Second, Stebbins.
Barger and Stebbins.
Yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
Okay. Article 12, report and fiscal year 2027 budget of the Community Preservation Committee.
For the next couple of articles, we have 12, 13, 14, and 15. Our esteemed community planner, Wayne Beitler, is joining us and will take us through each of those. We'll just start with Article 12, though.
Good evening, Wayne.
As well as our Director of Planning and Community Development, Ken Kirkland.
Hi, thanks for having me here tonight. So as Sean just said, I'm here for about 4 articles. The first one, Article 12, is every year, of course, the Community Preservation Act Committee brings forward its CPA budget based on numbers provided by the town accountant. And we've always tried to make the warrant articles very self-explanatory. So this sets out the appropriations for the 10% required set-aside amounts and budgeted reserves based on projections for what we're going to be probably getting in the upcoming fiscal year.
So the number one question that comes up is, why can't we use that money for fill in the blank?
Absolutely.
So I feel like a few years ago, before we talked about any of the CPA articles at town meeting, it's worth an explanation to everybody at town meeting. Some, it might be their first night there, or some, it's something that you have to remember because we don't really talk about this a whole lot. And so this money is a very small surcharge on your taxes, and it's put into this bucket that can only be used for historic preservation, open space, and
Affordable housing.
affordable housing.
Correct.
Sorry, little brain cramp there. And so when you say the 10%, you have to take 10% of whatever that money is that's collected and earmark it to those 3 buckets, but the rest goes into a fund. And should you need more money for affordable housing that year, the trust can request more money from the CPA
Correct.
in that budget. It's really been amazing for us because not only do we have the money that comes in from taxes, which again is a very modest amount, but the state puts a lot of funding into it. We were once again one of the first communities to join community preservation at the time when it was 100% state match. As it caught on, and now a lot more communities across the state are using it, the match has gone down a little bit, but I give a lot of credit to the statewide coalition because they found creative ways to try to put more money into this. There are things, if you go to the community preservation website and drop down the box to Easton, you can see all the projects that were funded by CPA money. And it's amazing. And to think about what the town would look like without the work that's been done preserving our historic assets, purchasing open space, the Queesick Gardens behind the library. Like, maybe some people haven't lived here long enough to remember when that was just an overgrown woods area, and then when they use CPC money and volunteer hours to clear that, it's one of the most magnificent spots that we have in Easton. So every penny of this money is used for really wonderful things, and town meeting votes on what we use it for. So
Yeah.
I think that this is great, and it's a very nice budget. So
Thank you. I would also like to reinforce some of the things you said. The CPC is very mindful of how they can leverage this money on important town priorities. CPA funds have been used for the amazing new playgrounds over at Richardson Olmsted. Folks have not been to see those yet. They really are impressive. Some government buildings are actually historic resources like Town Hall. So that benefited from using CPA funds for this very significant renovation we've just completed. The pickleball courts that people love, also a CPA project. So the CPC is very mindful of trying to fulfill these community priorities with its appropriations.
And I'll say, I remember when the trust first started, I went to some statewide meetings, and Easton was doing things that other places weren't doing. And one of them was helping first-time home buyers.
Yep.
You have put money into the Habitat for Humanity,
Yep.
purchased the house on up by Stoneforge that was for ownership, bought it, cleaned it up and sold it for a first-time home buyer.
Supportive housing for folks with brain injuries.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. So that's really, really impactful. And, housing that's affordable to people in the community is really important. Everybody complains about it, but they think that the way to fix it is just these big sweeping changes of one big project. It includes all these little infill type of
Yep.
projects that are very significant, and want to really thank the Affordable Housing Trust for their dedicated work on that, and Jen Stacy being our select board rep.
Yeah.
All right,
I
Craig?
agree. Just say in support of it, you're right, how much use so much of this property gets, whether it is the playgrounds, the pickleball courts, in Quiston, behind the library. It's so popular and well-used, and for wedding photos, for family photos, for gathering spots, and for outdoor concerts, and it's just all of it. So yeah, thank you. And you've done a lot in helping to acquire land when it comes up for right of refusal, right? And being there to purchase land that we can then turn into affordable housing as well. So that's great.
So I move to include and recommend Article 12.
Second sentence. Yeah, Mark, I miss you here, man.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
You can tell it's getting late. All right, the next item is Article 13, supplemental funding for the Children's Museum restoration.
Just what it says on the tin. So the initial CPA grant for the Children's Museum of $234,730 was approved a couple of years ago, but CPA projects were deferred for a year or so. And since then, construction costs have gone up. And the Children's Museum has requested $55,000 of supplemental funds to deal with some of these cost increases. They've arrived at this number by going back to the original vendors and contractors who provided quotes for the roofing, for the windows, for the painting, and so forth, and also calculating the average cost increase. So it's not a very large amount of money, but it is significant, and the CPC supports this and would like to make sure that the Children's Museum has the funds it needs to complete this comprehensive exterior restoration. Also of note, the Children's Museum is receiving a $129,000 Mass Cultural Council grant as well.
I was going to say that's important to note for people. Absolutely.
Yeah, leveraging the funding from the community preservation for other grants as a that require a match. Oaks Ames Hall has done that before also, is really important.
So I move to include and recommend Article 13.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
Terrific. All right, Article 14, CPA funding for Oaks Ames Memorial Hall, the tower roof.
And this is for $40,000 to repair a leaking and failed copper roof, which you can't actually see from the street. You know, the tower at the northeast corner of the hall. At the base of it, where it meets the main roof, is a very complicated copper roof that is begun to fail significantly. Broken seams, deteriorated metal. The hall is seeking additional funding for the total project cost, estimated at $150,000, and as Dottie just referenced, using CPA funds as matching grants. So the hall has requested $40,000 of CPA funds. They're seeking other grants to make up the total project cost. And the CPC is very mindful of the importance of the building and the critical nature of roof leaks, and wants to make sure that that does get addressed. So they did vote to include and recommend this $40,000 request contingent on the hall receiving matching funds. And if they don't receive sufficient funds to actually do the entire project, then that money will go to CPA.
Okay, so I move to include and recommend Article 14.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
All right, Article 15, conservation restriction authorization.
So one aspect of the Community Preservation Act enabling legislation is that conservation land acquired with CPA funds is required to have conservation restrictions on it. The CPC is working with a local nonprofit or a regional nonprofit, Wildlands Trust, to complete the state-required conservation restrictions on the 4 properties that the town has acquired over the last 20-some years using CPA funds. That's a small parcel over by Clifford Grant off of Randall Street. There's a property at 130 Dean Street. There's the conservation component of the 524 Depot Street acquisition, and a what was going to be a subdivision called Mayflower Lane off of Maspog. When the town votes to expend CPA funds to acquire land, there's sort of standard language that's often used, and it authorizes the select board to convey or accept a conservation restriction among various other things. For one of these four properties, the Maspog one, the original vote in 2009 did not actually include that language in error. So as we're looking to complete all of these conservation restrictions, we wanted to make sure that we did have that authorization language as a vote. So that's what this article does.
So this is just a vote to authorize the restriction,
Correct.
but there's going to be a cost to this for the conservation restriction.
There is going to be costs. The CPC has approved administrative funds for the endowment contributions to Wildlands Trust to defer their costs for monitoring these, for the legal documents, for the recording fees. So those costs have been covered by CPC in an appropriation of administrative funds.
That's not part of this article then?
No, that is not part of this article. This is merely creating an error in language, an omission from 2009.
And is that a one-time cost for the CR
Correct.
holder?
Yes. Yeah. It's a one-time endowment fund contribution.
Okay. All right.
So I move to include and recommend Article 15.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
All right. Article 16, is that
Yep.
still you guys?
Yeah, well, Ken will be here for questions, but Articles 16, 17, 18, and 19 are all citizens petitions related to, and they're all zoning related articles. They are citizens petitions. They have met the required signatures to be able to get on the town meeting warrant. So your vote here tonight won't be to include them per se, because they can be there regardless. So it's really just a matter of whether or not you recommend any of these four. So before you is the language that the petitioners have presented on 16, 17, 18, and 19 for your review, and you can make your vote based off of what they've presented.
Should we get a little background on this for people that are watching?
Sure. Also important context is that to go through this process for a zoning article, once you get the required signatures, it's transmitted to the Planning and Zoning Board. The Planning and Zoning Board is required to have a public hearing on this, so folks have the opportunity to hear more, ask questions. The Planning and Zoning Board can ask questions as well, and they did so for all four of these articles. And on March 16th, the Planning and Zoning Board held a public hearing, and they voted on Article 16 5-0 not to recommend. And then for Article 17, they voted 3-2 not to recommend. And then both Article 18 and 19 both were a 3-0 vote on April 13th not to recommend. So all four of them were not recommended by the Planning and Zoning Board. But if there's more specific questions, Ken's here to be able to add some commentary to what the Planning and Zoning Board talked about and what misgivings they might have about these particular articles.
Yeah, I think that people should really watch some of these meetings, because I think it's important that people understand what these four articles are as citizens petitions. It started with a licensed daycare that's in a residential neighborhood that wanted to expand a little bit, not any kind of drastic thing. You could drive by this home. It's a home-based daycare. If you drove by it, you'd never even know it was a daycare. It looks just like every other house on the street. And the neighbors were very upset. We got some emails about it, that they felt that they should have been notified and that they didn't want it there, and they thought it was going to bring traffic and all these other conditions. This is, the use of a residential daycare is protected and under the state regulations. The town has no say over it. It's a by right use, so that can happen. The neighbors have put out signs saying that people aren't welcome there, that children aren't welcome there. I'm going to paraphrase, that's not exactly what they say, but that's the gist of it. And so this is coming from the neighbors group that want to put rules on here, but to me, it's moot because we can't put any rules over it. It's allowed by right. And I will say that, in my opinion, this has been a really difficult one. I sat in on one of the zoning of appeals meetings with neighbors and with the daycare owner. And I thought that Ryan and the rest of the members of the ZBA did a very good job hearing it. And, there's issues about the signs. There's a lot of issues with this going on. But I am 100% against this. So I definitely do not support this.
Ken, do you want to share any, just overview, kind of overall sentiment of the vote?
So they took 16 and 17 were kind of done together at the same meeting because they're how connected they are with each other. And so part of the initial 5-0 was a straight Section 3 use, state protected use, protected from regulation, very limited. By right is by right, it's crystal clear. And so this was actually the second time the Planning and Zoning Board had heard it. There was there was a petition from the previous year before my tenure here. And it was a similar recommendation, essentially similar proposal. This came back with slightly fewer components that were onto it. But the board felt the same as they had done previously, was that they did not wish to, have these being regulated for the concern over litigation, also just the nature of it being a by right use, not just being a by right use, but a by right use regulated by the state, not just a standard by right use that we would, that your bylaw would include. And so that was that. And then also with Article 17, the public notice aspect, the division, there wasn't really much of a discussion on the two votes, but the 3-2 was more of, when the staff had made the presentation, was that as a by right use, not just at the state, but as a by right use, there's a policy of saying something is by right, there is no notice because of its nature as a by right use. You're allowed to do it. There is no notice. There's no reason for notice. Similar to if you put up, say, for instance, a shed, you meet all the required setbacks, you meet everything. There's no value added in sending notice to your neighbors for something that they really have there's nothing wrong with it, so to speak. There's no relief being requested. There's none of that being asked for. But that was kind of the gist of this particular, of this discussion was, it's a Section 3 use. We don't want to get into the aspects of possibly trying to regulate this. And then when it gets litigated, when you get to the point of litigation, it's beyond trying to argue the aspects of it. It's a by right use, in addition to it being a by right use regulated by the state.
Thank you.
So the issue is moot in terms of 16 and 17?
Correct.
Because it's by right, there's nothing we can do about that.
Correct, yeah. The public notice aspect was more of the no notice goes out for any sort of site plan review. So if it's a by right use, any regular site plan review, by right, there is no notice. The notice was specifically curated to childcare facilities as defined that are in residential districts. So a childcare facility in commercial or non-residential would not receive that. Only childcare facilities in residential.
It's any educational facility.
Childcare.
Just childcare?
Just childcare. Just childcare in just residential district.
Okay, thank you.
I think that opens us up to a lawsuit and a lot of liability. It's very discriminatory that you're going to take. There's a lot of things, like you said, that you don't need to do a butter notification for. You're going to take this one particular use of this one particular industry and say that that is the one that has to be notified, when even if you do notify, you can't make the changes to it anyway because it's by right. So it also costs the town money to do these notifications. So I would never be of any interest to take one slice of a situation and say, well, we're going to require notifications for that, but not all these other ones. If everybody says we want notifications on everything that doesn't require them, there's a cost in terms of the money. It's a cost in terms of labor for the staff to have to process all of those. So I don't think that makes any sense.
And of note, just to get some context with that, the state of Rhode Island just changed their laws regarding public notice. The requirement is now it's clearly specified, where it's kind of ambiguous before. Public notice is handled by the applicant or by the petitioner with a notarized affidavit, which previously was first-class mail certified return receipt. certified mail return receipt. And it was flipped and clarified that it's on the applicant or the petitioner. Regardless, you send it first-class mail, then you do a notarized affidavit saying, here's the date I sent it. So essentially what you said about the component of there's no need for this because we say as by right, there's no value added, and that was essentially what the board felt as well and what staff had presented as part of that particular article.
Yeah. Mark, any thoughts?
I mean, it seems it's all a moot point. As discussed, this is a state law, and to your point, Dottie, it does seem pretty targeted discrimination. Yeah, I'm not in support of it.
Okay.
So we're not, it's included automatically because it's a petition, it says a petition. We don't have to,
we will make a motion to include.
No, you don't have
Oh,
to.
we don't have
You
to?
just have to say
Okay.
whether or not you recommend or not.
Okay. So I would ask that we vote to not recommend.
Article 16.
16, 17, 18, and 19, or just,
We'll have to do them one at a time.
okay. So move to not recommend Article 16.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins?
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
Okay, Article 17, again, it's the continuation that Ken already described, so
By right, yeah. So we're not recommending Article 17. Or
If you wanna make that
we propose not to recommend Article 17.
Second, Stebbins.
so that's a motion and a second. Bodger and Stebbins,
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
All right. This is hard because we don't usually vote no, so it's to do, are we voting no or yes? So.
Then Article 18 and 19, Ken, do you want to talk a little bit more about, because there are two separate petitioners, and so this one is slightly different, but if you want to just add a little more flavor to this, because it's particular to signs.
So similar to 16 and 17, 18 and 19 were submitted simultaneously together because of how they relate to each other. Article 18, in a very brief sense, would require permitting, review, permitting, and filing fees for all types of signage. There is no such thing as a sign that does not require a permit. I think it's 235-29L is the section that deals with signs not requiring permits. That section is completely eliminated and is moved into, absorbed into another section. But really that's what it does, is that requires all signs, even political ones, there's no call-outs, would require a building permit, filing fee, review, administration, that sort of thing through the building inspector. The real issue was the aspect of rolling in political signs. As we know, there's been several Supreme Court cases, most notably the Reed case, dealing with political signs and how they're still, even something that attempts to be content neutral by itself, limiting a political sign to X amount of days before or after, those sorts of things. Those limitations by themselves are considered issues in terms of First Amendment freedom of speech. And so building off of the previous set of articles that had come in, this was submitted in response to those to address those concerns. So there is no change in terms of the dimensional requirements. So there's no increases in what's allowed. There's no decreases in what's allowed. There's no additional numbers of what's allowed or size of what's allowed, but it's merely saying any type of sign going from an open flag, holiday decorations, real estate signs, temporary signs, any sort of that kind, now requires a building permit with review, filing fees, administration, etc. And also Article 19 was just changing the definition of a temporary sign to include the fixture in which it's put on. So the best thing to think about is for the members that are up for re-election or any sort of political signs, typically you'll see them where they're kind of an H-bar piece of metal and they're tubular pieces of metal and they go into the ground, your sign sits in those and you stick them in the ground. That definition of including a temporary sign now includes the support structures of actually holding that sign. So that's what Article 19 is. And so the board's consideration of this was strictly related to First Amendment, the issues in relation to the fact, political signs, there's no call for that, but also and the board members know me, and I believe some of the administration knows me, I try not to argue things and saying, well, it causes too much of a hassle with administration. But putting it in the context of take your real estate signs, take your open flags, take your any type of thing like that, even the signs for, hey, this is an Easton graduate lives here. That's got a time limitation to it. You got to apply for it. There's a fee that goes with it, and you're only allowed a certain temporary signs. All of them have a time limit on them, as they do now. But it's now saying that even the ones that didn't need a permit before, they get included in that. So there's a time limitation on those. And so that was the biggest concern for the board for this discussion was the First Amendment implications of that. But secondary was also the administrative hassle, the implementation and monitoring of this particular proposal.
It's also unenforceable. We don't have the staff. I mean, that could really help close the budget gap if you think about like all, and I'm being sarcastic when I say that, but just charging people for the sake of charging people on things like that, we don't have somebody to enforce it and then have to track down. We get requests every once in a while, especially in spring after people have had signs out for whatever. There's a lot of sign litter here. When is somebody going to go out and clean up the signs after an election? Not usually the local election. I have to say everybody's good about going and picking up their signs. There might be a straggler here or there, but for the most part, sometimes on the state and federal, those signs they're never in places that are the right places you can have them, and they sit there for months afterwards. You have a big storm and there's signs blown all over the place. Some people aren't responsible for cleaning up after themselves on that, but they're just, it would be creating a rule that we know is not enforceable. And, like you say, with the First Amendment, I don't want to get into a court case on something like that and get that challenged. I understand the context of this. When you have a business and somebody puts up signs that are detrimental to your business, and a lot of the neighbors have signs that are damaging to this daycare business, I can understand that, but I just don't think it's going to be effective in the outcome that the petitioner is looking for.
And I think it wasn't explicitly stated, but part of the underlying aspect of the administration enforcement aspect was that implementing this would create a system where you're doing enforcement rather than proactive permitting. Similarly to what I had said about the by right uses, we've determined that there are certain signs, by being so diminutive in their nature and they're temporary, so forth. We've said we've carved out for pragmatic reasons, but they don't require permits for reasons. They're temporary, they're small in nature, they're small in size, they're temporary in nature, they're temporary in time, they're sensitive to that particular area because a real estate sign, for the most part, we know permanently temporary commercial real estate signs. But for the most part, a sign that does not require a permit has been determined to be a by right sign because of that is. When you make everything require a permit, you're creating an environment where you're always on the offensive in terms of enforcement. Then it becomes into chasing after that individual. Is the person who put the sign there, do you go after the person whose sign it is, or do you go after the property owner? It could be both. Those things that they weren't addressed in this, but the board's sentiment was essentially that as well, was the board doesn't believe that this is going to create a solution that you're looking for to address the problem that you feel is there. And that solution, if there were a solution, it's not within the realm of a municipality to address that.
I will say, I'll give you my personal comment on this whole situation, is it breaks my heart that the neighbors and the business owner can't find some kind of a solution. I think as a mother that drove my infants to daycare, driving through a neighborhood with signs like that would be horrible. It's very hard when you have children to leave them at daycare. You miss them. You have to go to work. And I think it's very unwelcoming and very sad to see those signs out, especially they've been up for months and months and months. They made their point, figure it out and try to come to some kind of resolution. It's not very neighborly, and I don't think that that's what most of the people in Easton stand for. So, just my 2 cents. So
we're gonna move to not recommend Article 18.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Barger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
All right, and Article 18,
No, Article 19.
I'm sorry,
Yep. So we're not going to,
19.
we're not going to recommend Article 19.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
Okay. So we are done with all the warrant articles. Article 17, acceptance of the minutes of April 6, 2026, and April 8th, 2026.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Stebbins.
Bodger and Stebbins.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
All right. Thank you, Wayne and Ken. All right. Let me see. Town administrator notes.
Nothing other than this is my final meeting as interim town administrator. So
Already?
yeah, 3 months later. I guess I just want to thank Wendy and Elizabeth and the board for being grounding sources and for me over a 3-month period. And that we're excited to have Liz join us as our new town administrator starting on Monday. So looking forward to that. And of course, our second day is an election. 3 weeks after that's town meeting. So what a time to jump into that. But keeping the ship afloat was not done something specifically by me, but by the great team that we have here. And I'm very grateful for all of them. A lot of late nights, but it was in a really chaotic season for us to be in. But we have a really great team here that just keeps things moving. So I'm grateful for them for that.
Terrific.
I think we should all, I'll just say, Sean, thank you for your leadership, and Wendy and Elizabeth. Yeah, we were right to be as confident as we were when we had you step into the role, and excited for the future for progression too. So thank you all.
Sean's done a great job. And Elizabeth?
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to run into Elizabeth outside of Sean's office a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how impressive the leadership in this town is and how helpful it's going to be to her coming in brand new, that not only Sean and Wendy and Elizabeth, but all the town department heads that she's been meeting with, and how impressed she is with them and how impressed I am with all of them as well. And it was nice to talk to her about that.
Yeah.
And that's the important part of this is by design. So having the second in command, should anything happen, whether it's parental leave or a vacation or they leave to work somewhere else, this is a big corporation. Like, you just can't leave that seat vacant. We need somebody that can be able to step in. And so by having you train alongside Connor all this time, you've learned a lot. You put it all to use, and you had to make some really big decisions on things that were happening, and you did a really great job. You talked a lot of it through with your team, with us, and I think you did an amazing job, and we're really grateful that you were able to step up and do that for us. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Now you're going to move all the furniture around in the office?
Yes, exactly. Well, no, I didn't touch the movement of anything in her office, so she'll have complete agency to just go in and move if she wishes, but I think it's set up pretty nicely. So, but back into my old office, I've moved some things around and things look a little different, so I invite you all to come take a peek.
Open house in Sean's
Yeah,
office.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Any select board notes?
I have something, so I'll let my colleagues decide if they have anything they want to say. Okay.
I do not.
I was notified at a meeting several weeks ago that our state senator, Bill Driscoll, has put in a $2 million earmark on the environmental bond bill that's going through the Senate right now. The $2 million for infrastructure at the industrial park for our sewer. Which I got very excited about. And he said, Craig, take it easy. I've recommended it. I'm hoping it's going to come through. I said, well, and it's good enough that you actually asked for that kind of money for us. And I thought it's worth calling him out for that, because that's a terrific thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
That is, and I think it's important for you that you mentioned that, and I appreciate that, because we heard a lot over the past year that are you working with your legislators? What can you do? And that is those relationships. We have gotten some pretty significant funding and earmarks with our legislators' support, and they really have been doing a good job for us and continue to fight the battle for some of the things that still aren't resolved. But great appreciation to them, and thank you for calling that out, Craig. All right, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So I'll move Barger.
Second, Stebbins.
That's Bodger and Stebbins. Roll call vote.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Full Janetti, yes.
Barger, yes.
All right, good night, Mark.
Good night, Mark.
Good night, Mark. Thank you, Joe.